Now, the fight against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria saw us learn more about Peshmerga forces. Certainly, we heard about Peshmerga forces, which perhaps many of us hadn't before, who were trying to help stop the land grab there. Now, the Kurdish forces have a long history in Middle Eastern conflicts, including an active part in the Iranian Revolution, where they fought not just for the liberty of their country, but also for women's rights and the equality for Kurdish people. Well, let's talk to Diana Nammi, who was a frontline fighter with the Peshmerga during the revolution at the age of 17. She's written her story, A Girl with a Gun, about the conflict that she's witnessed. Good to see you this morning, and we see you in this picture as well, don't we? I mean, it's remarkable what you must have experienced as a very young woman.
Oh, it's you know, as a very young woman, we have been in a situation that it was extremely dangerous for women, extremely barbaric for women. The situation that now you can see in Iraq and Syria under ISIS, it was a similar situation there. So the story is as relevant today as it was in 1979. It was a very tough situation, but I think we had no choice rather to defend ourselves with whatever we could, and become a Peshmerga was the main way that we could fight against all barbarics.
But even now, all these years later, there's still an eyebrow raised, isn't there, about young women taking up arms rather than young men?
Many young women taking part, of course. Still, there are many young men, I have to say. At that time, the majority were men. We were the minority within the Peshmerga group. But what we have done, it was quite extremely important in terms of women's rights, human rights, defending the community, and not allowing women to become sex slave or slave of the barbaric regime who took place in Iran. And during the war, of course, especially the situation for women getting worse. Women are the first victim, and children as well are the first victim of any kind of those war. When the Islamic regime thought they have to kill all the men, to enslave all women, to rape women and girls before even to execute them, because they were Kurdish or they were not Shia, or we demanded it's our only human rights and women's rights, and it was the basic thing for us. So we had to do this fight for our lives and safety of our community and women.
There you were as a teenager, a very, very young woman, on the front line, getting involved with the Peshmerga. I don't know how many years you were fighting, but what happened to you? Those experiences have shaped your views, your opinions, and I suppose your campaigning ever since.
Oh, since then, yes. I was 17 when I became Peshmerga, and I was Peshmerga for 12 years.
Wow.
And I was in the front line most of the time. Especially I was within the teams that we used to go to villages and to cities, of course, when it was safe for us, to do meetings for women, especially for community, talking about their rights, talking about women's equality, against domestic violence, against honor-based violence. I mean, considering my age, I learned quite a lot. Because of my life, I had a very wonderful father. Even by 2 days, he was one of the best father you could imagine, and he taught me lots of things about my rights. And for example, he said that all my daughters have to marry by their choice. So it gave me a question. So there are marriages by other marriage that is not by choice, but it's by force. And I had friends, they have been forced into a marriage. So it taught me to think about these issues within the community, on a killing, forced marriage, child marriage, exchanging women for marriage. So
how depressing is it then, Diana, that we're in a situation? I mean, obviously we've got the situation with Syria, with Iraq, with Afghanistan, with the Taliban, where all these things have been ongoing. But with Iran, fighting for all that now, and obviously the situation for women in Iran is not in a good place at the moment.
Oh no, definitely not. And over the past 3 decades or 4 decades, it's getting worse and worse. Although women really had done a huge campaign for their rights and didn't tolerate many of the forces that government used to do. But, government forced women to wear hijab, for example, by throwing acid on their face and throwing acid on their legs, by slashing them in public, executing them in public. It was not a choice for people to wear hijab. It was not a choice for women to go home and not do any work and become just a housewife. Although in Iran, women are studying and they have this choice for study, but the gender segregation, it's a huge problem in Iran, in Iraq, and now become a problem within Middle Eastern due to the rise of the fundamentalists, especially within the area, and all those regime changes that has been done. Unfortunately, the Islamic group and the religious group got power, and they try to use the Sharia law and the law of religion. So by doing that, always women has become a second citizen of the community and the society, and they have no equal rights. Even in some countries, they cannot make any decision about their own life. Any decision, even moving from one city to another city, needs to be by permission. So all of those things, and for me especially, become a Peshmerga 12 years, living not with my own family, but within the larger community. I learned a lot. It was a tough situation for us to be being in war, to fight for women's rights. I mentioned in my interview for people, if they look at the Unbound website, Unbound book website / Girl with a Gun, so they can see. I mentioned that I used to sleep between graves, and at that time we thought this is the safest place because at least it kept us from winds and harsh weather. So many times we lived, all these 12 years, we lived on the mountain, and it was horrific war between government and us, and especially during the war between Iraq and Iran, and civil war between parties in Kurdistan.
Diana, it is fascinating to talk to you, and as you say, I think Girl with a Gun is going to be as relevant today, looking at it now, as it is reflecting back on the revolution of 1979. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.